Story 1. This story takes place back in 2019. In 2018, I started getting back into PlayStation after being an Xbox player for a really long time. Some of the first games I played were Fortnite and Minecraft. The only people I would play with at first were the kids at my school. It was fun at first, but they started to become jerks. They were not only doing it online, but in person. I eventually got sick and tired of all the cyberbullying, so I just blocked all of them. I had to move schools too, but that's a story for another time. In September, I remember starting to make random online friends, but I more or less tried my best to make sure they were within an acceptable age group. 8 to 20 years old was what my parents allowed. I met some cool friends, and we had a lot of fun. As I made more friends, I would forget or abandon others. You know how it goes. One way I looked for friends was via YouTube. I looked up small YouTubers who were around my age, and I found many of them. However, I found one YouTuber who had brittle bone syndrome. His disability isn't necessary to know about, but it is part of the story. Anyway, we were in a party, and he introduced me to one of his friends. Later, his friend left and joined another party. When I joined the party, she introduced me to a dude who enjoyed playing Minecraft. At the time, I was trying to rebuild Disneyland, and he told me he knew someone who could help. I eventually met the dude. He's from Ireland, but let's call him John. When John sent me a friend request, he sent a real name friend request. At the time, I learned that if you put your real name on PlayStation, people can see it if they send you a real name request. John and I used to play Minecraft very often. As I got to know John, I met his other friends as well. As we were about to play a game in the summer of 2019, his friend, who had an Irish accent, came into the party and asked, "Why do you live in my town?" This scared the living crap out of me. Keep in mind, I don't live in a big city. I live in a relatively small town in the suburbs of Chicago. The fact that he knew where I live scared me to death. My friend repeated the same thing too. I immediately left the party and told my dad. My dad told me it was probably someone I somehow knew in real life. After that, I immediately blocked both of them and never talked to them again. I also changed my real name on PSN. This is why everyone should be careful of what they do online. I felt a bit stupid for doing that, but I guess I was just very naive at the time. Story 2. I posted here a couple of days ago about my imaginary friend Lisa. I promised I would write again, so here it is. Again, I apologize for the English mistakes you guys are about to read. Smiley face. Last time, I told you how Lisa basically made me some sort of pyromaniac acolyte. Well, safe to say, after my mom's punishment, which may be frowned upon by others, which I won't get into, not even Lisa could make me light a match, let alone play with fire. The second incident with Lisa is as follows. I have many more, but this one came to mind first. She wasn't always trying to harm me or put me in danger. I'm sure sometimes she meant well. After a certain age, I wouldn't see her while I was awake, but only in my dreams. This happened when I was together with someone who I almost gave up my future for. But I won't spoil it just yet. We'd been together, me and this person, for about 2 years at this point. I couldn't really open up about everything to them, especially about Lisa. She would basically inflict nightmares on me if I spoke to people about her. I was scared, to say the least. So, I was 20 at that point. I'm 23 now. My partner and I were kind of far away from each other. I was living with my grandma, and they were a manager at a coffee shop in the middle of the biggest city near me at that time. They were 19. Without dragging this on for too long, I asked them, "Can we meet tonight?" They denied it, saying that they were working all evening until 12 a.m. Well, I didn't think too much of it because I trusted them. I fell asleep that night and dreamed of Lisa. I saw her crying above what seemed to be my lifeless body. I ran to her. She looked mutilated at this point due to rapid aging. I asked her, "What is happening with me?" Without opening her mouth, she spoke telepathically to me, "You foolish boy, can't you see when you are being lied to?" I truly didn't know what she meant. Then I asked, What do you mean? She touched me, grabbed my arm, and I saw visions. I saw a complex of apartments with the number 44 or 45. I can't remember exactly. Then I saw them cheating on me with a man. The man was more of a boy, blonde with green eyes. I woke up after that, sweating. I cried so much. A few weeks later, I randomly looked through their gallery to find pictures of me that I had taken. I found screenshots of an Instagram DM with a location, 10 XXXX Street, flat 44. I looked up the boy on Instagram, and he had blonde hair and green eyes. So, this is how Lisa basically showed me I was being cheated on. Thanks, Lisa. You're a boss, wherever you are now. Story 3. One day, when I was with my mom, we went to her best friend's, at the time, house. I want to say I was around 3 or 4 years old. Her house was located on the east side of LA. She stayed in this big, brown, 3-bedroom, old-school type of home. It had an upstairs and a basement. The house already gave spooky vibes during the nighttime just by the way it looked. But anyway, we ended up staying over all day. My mom's best friend, Pooh, had this staircase that led to the upstairs bedrooms. I remember it was nighttime. The lights in the house were on, but no one was downstairs. I could hear my mom and Pooh laughing and talking. The TV downstairs was on, and on the screen was Rugrats. I was watching the TV from the staircase. I remember sliding down each stair one by one all the way to the bottom. When I reached the bottom, I was now in this spacious living room, just standing there, looking around. I wasn't all the way familiar with the house yet, so I just explored with my eyes. Looking around, my focus stopped right at the kitchen. I saw an older African-American man sitting in a chair at the kitchen table. He had on reading glasses and wasn't facing me. It was like he was just living. I felt like a ghost. Not once did he look my way, and not once did I go near him. I wasn't scared. He didn't make me feel uneasy. He just literally sat there, looking like he was waiting for his morning coffee or something. I don't know. Of course, I crawled my ass back upstairs as fast as I could to my mom and Pooh and told them immediately. Now, here's the scary part. After telling them what I had just seen, they both looked at me crazily. I scared my mom's best friend because the description of the man I saw in the kitchen was her dad, who had passed away from a heart attack in the house years before I was born. My mom knew him as well since they were teenagers. She told me that he used to smoke cigarettes and would always be in that kitchen sitting down with his newspaper. I scared my mom's best friend so much that every time she would see me after this encounter, she'd ask if I'd seen anything else. Sadly, I never saw him again, but I definitely went back to that house more than once. Overall, I like to think that was his comfort spot, his familiarity. His energy was watching over his house. Years later, after that encounter, my mom's best friend's house burned down. I don't know exactly why or how. I'd have to get some information, but even I found that to be kind of creepy and sad. Story 4. So, I had zero intention of sleeping in my car that night. I was out with some friends in downtown St. Louis, bar hopping, just enjoying the night, you know? But then I lost track of how much I'd been drinking. By the time it hit me, I was way too hammered to drive, but I didn't want to blow money on a hotel or figure out an Uber back to the suburbs, so I made the dumb decision to sleep it off in my car. I ended up parking in this small, mostly empty lot near the riverfront. It seemed quiet enough, no sketchy vibes, at least at first. My car's an old sedan, not exactly built for comfort, but I tried to make the back seat work. I grabbed a ratty sweatshirt from the trunk to use as a pillow and cracked the windows just enough for air. The streetlights were flickering above, giving off this weird, eerie glow, but I was too tired and too buzzed to care. Eventually, I drifted off. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to this tapping on my window. My first thought, great, a cop's gonna bust me for sleeping here. But nope, it wasn't a cop. I squinted out the window, and there was this figure standing there, right up against the glass. The light from the street barely hit them, just enough to make out the shape of someone in a hoodie, standing way too close to my car for comfort. I tried to play it cool, thinking maybe they'd go away if I didn't react. But then they started circling the car slowly, dragging their fingers along the glass. My heart was pounding. They stopped at the driver's side door, and I heard them try the handle. Thank God I'd locked it. Then they moved to the back window, where I was lying down, and pressed their face against the glass. I couldn't see their face clearly, just this shadowy outline of eyes staring right at me. I didn't move, barely breathed, just hoping they'd get bored and leave. After what felt like forever, they stepped back, but I didn't hear them walk away. I stayed frozen, trying to figure out if they were still there. Finally, I worked up the nerve to sit up and peek out the windshield. And there they were, standing like 10 feet in front of my car, just staring, not moving. I don't even remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly I had them, hands shaking as I started the car. The second the headlights flipped on, they bolted, running off into the darkness. I didn't stick around to see where they went, I just floored it out of there, driving until I found a busy, well-lit gas station where I stayed the rest of the night, doors locked, headlights on, wide awake. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Even now, whenever I drive past that part of town, I catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that figure again, lurking in the shadows. Story 5. This isn't really a scary story, but it was scary for me in the moment. This just happened about 30 minutes ago, and I'm still creeped out by it. Let me start off by saying that I'm a 15-year-old female, so I go everywhere with my mom. The day started normal. I woke up and went downstairs to my living room to play a game with my sister. We played for about 30 minutes when my older sister came downstairs as well to get ready to go to a movie with her boyfriend. I love going on car rides everywhere, as long as I have my headphones. I got up from the couch to get ready to go. Fast forward to after we dropped her and her boyfriend off at the movies. My mom told me we were stopping at the library to bring some books back, and I asked her if I could go inside and get a book. Inside the library is a teen room where there are a bunch of books for teenagers. I walked over to the teen area to find a book, but there were some people in there already, and I didn't want to go in while they were there because it would have been awkward. I looked around the teen room for some books while I waited for them to leave so I could go in. After a few minutes of waiting, they finally got up and left, so I entered the room. I was in the room by myself for a good 10 minutes, trying to find a good book to read. Suddenly, I had this feeling to turn around, and when I did, my stomach dropped. I saw what I'm guessing was a 16 to 18-year-old guy watching me, not even pretending to look for a book, just watching me as I was trying to find a book. As soon as he noticed me looking at him, he immediately turned around and left the room. I don't know how long he was there watching me, but it made me feel really uneasy. What freaked me out the most was that I never even heard him enter or leave the room, and the door to the room is really loud. I stayed in the room a few minutes longer, still trying to find a book, but I kept getting this feeling to turn around, and every time I did, I'd see him looking at me and getting closer to the room again. Every time he noticed me seeing him, he would turn around and walk away fast. I got uncomfortable at that point, grabbed a random book, and ran to my mom. After we checked out, we walked outside to the car, and I never saw the guy again. I'm still creeped out by this as I write it. But to the guy who was watching me while I was looking for a book, let's not meet again. Story 6. Around 8 or 9 years ago, I was hanging out at my old house, chowing down on some food my mom cooked for me. It was pretty early, like around 11 a.m., so my big brother was at school, and my dad was at work. After I finished eating, the kitchen/home phone started ringing. I told my mom before she went upstairs to her room. She told me not to answer it. But as soon as she was out of sight, I couldn't resist picking it up to see who was calling us. When I picked up the call, it was my mom's voice on the other end saying, "Hey, is this Christina?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" We had a whole chat, just like we were in the same room. But here's the weird part, my real mom was still upstairs, not on the phone with me. And while I was talking to her, I could hear my dad, who was at work, chatting with her too. I asked my mom if it was Dad, and she said it was. I even asked if I could talk to him, and she passed the phone to him. I was freaked out but curious, so I asked him what he was up to. He said he was making cereal in the kitchen. The crazy thing was, I was also in the kitchen on the phone with them. This was getting seriously weird. I started getting suspicious that my parents were playing a prank, so I thought, let's see what happens if I ask to talk to my brother. My dad handed the phone over to my supposed brother, and I got spooked and hung up. But then, the phone started ringing again, and I gave in and answered. They were asking why I hung up, and I came up with a lame excuse about needing to go to the bathroom. I asked to talk to Christina, which was actually me, and things got super eerie. I heard myself talking to me, and it was just too much. I ended the call. They kept calling a few more times, but I ignored them. Honestly, to this day, I'm still scratching my head over what went down. I've tried looking for answers and people who've been through similar stuff, but I haven't found anything that clicks. My AI buddy mentioned maybe I mixed up my memory or had some kind of wild dream, but I'm pretty sure what I experienced was as real as it gets. If anyone out there has a clue or went through something like this, help a confused soul out. This is another version of a story I made but rewrote with simpler words. I thought it would be confusing for people who don't read well. You can check it out on my page. Also, this is a true story I've experienced. If you have any advice or have experienced something similar, please let me know. I'm trying to find answers.